Hello, I'm Josh Lohman and welcome to Alaska Filmmakers, a series dedicated to exploring the many talented individuals in the Alaska film community. Throughout the filmmaking community, the most personal and informative style of production is documentary. Today, this style can be seen almost anywhere in the media, from news to reality television and of course the silver screen. Filmmaker Laura Ganis has spent her career in all three markets of documentary filmmaking. After going to school on the East Coast, Laura eventually made her way to Los Angeles before coming to Alaska. Laura joined AKF host Stephanie Wonchala here at Alaska Pacific University to talk more about her role in film and television production.
Hi Laura, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
How did you get involved with production?
I started in production, well, actually in college. I went to NYU. I was accepted to Tisch School of the Arts, which is the film program, and I ended up transferring to a school that wasn't quite so film-centric. I was more interested in documentaries and felt I needed a more well-rounded background. But that's how I started, and because I had been accepted to Tisch still let me take classes within the school there, so I did a bunch of documentaries there, and that's how it started for me in college. Then I went back to Los Angeles where I grew up, and I, through a contact, had a friend and ended up getting a production assistant job on a film, which was a Jean-Claude Van Damme film. And after that, I could have gone to an Arnold Schwarzenegger film, Last Action Hero, but I decided to kind of leave that world and get more into documentaries. So I started on The Real World after that and did that for a bunch of years, and that was the start of my career.
What is it about documentaries that draws you in?
Well, I was a journalism major first before I transferred to Tisch, and I'm just very interested in real life stories. I started off as a production assistant, and I've literally done every job, especially on The Real World for MTV. I did that for 3 years, and even though I was a coordinator and producer, you end up having to do sound, shoot, production management, craft service, you name it. I've done it all. Starting as a PA is the way to go because you see a little bit of everything. I was an assistant editor for a long time, so it's just a matter of doing those apprenticeships where you learn.
Is there a specific field in production that you'd like to try?
I would like to probably show run, do more instead of field producing or producing. That's probably the next step for me, to actually run an entire show and be the top person, but I'm in the field that I want to be in, doing what I want to do.
So what brought you to Alaska?
I was in Los Angeles. I worked there for about 10 years. I was doing a lot of reality shows and getting kind of burnt out. I always had a second interest in animals, so I went to school to be a vet tech and came up here to be a wildlife technician. And I just couldn't stay away from the film world and got right back into it when I got up here and worked seasonally as a wildlife tech in the field, and then just called everybody in town. And being from LA, I was sort of a big fish in a small pond here. Ended up starting at the bottom a little bit here, but working my way up pretty quickly. I've been here for almost 7 years now.
What other reality shows, aside from The Real World, have you worked on?
Well, the first documentary I did was the Powers, which was Pet Owners with AIDS Resource Services. It's an organization that cares for pets of people with AIDS. That was my first foray into that world, and then I just hung out in New York and shot people on the streets with Super 8 cameras. And then when I got into production, I've done shows for Learning Channel, History Channel, Discovery Channel. Let me think about some of my shows. Everything from extreme surfing for Learning Channel to Modern Marvels, a couple episodes of that for History Channel, and just a lot. Everything from world's craziest hostage rescues to, kind of more top of the line stuff. So really the gamut.
What's one of your favorite projects that you've worked on so far, and why?
I did 2 episodes of Modern Marvels for History Channel. We did one in Juneau with a man who built his own submarine, and we just got back from Nome, where we shot a whole bunch of stories, and I really enjoyed that process because as opposed to reality television, it was much more documentary style and facts, and those projects I find interesting.
What projects do you find most challenging?
Well, I just finished a commercial. It was extremely challenging. I'm used to working with a very small crew, basically me and a camera person and a sound person. And this commercial for Alaska Airlines that I just finished had about 15 agency people and various levels of producers. And I find dealing with the top of the line people as opposed to focusing on the work a little difficult. We also did all the casting and all the location scouting for this project, and we shot in Anchorage, Seward, and Nome. And we had 3 days to shoot it all, and we're coming up on winter, so the weather was a factor, and we didn't have any weather days. So that was a good challenge for me and fun. I enjoy doing commercials. I worked on a feature to the Big Miracles. That was a big challenge too. I had a crew of about 22 people come to Barrow. We shot all the second unit exteriors in Barrow for that, and I had to make that work with shipping in tons of gear and feeding and keeping about 22 people from LA warm. So in the dead of winter, that was a challenge too. Those are probably two of my biggest challenges lately.
It's a small market, so how do you handle competition?
Yes, Alaska is a very small market. It's growing, but compared to Los Angeles especially, for filmmaking and television making and production in general, it's a small market. But I feel it is essential that we all of us work together, every one of our production companies. And I think it behooves us all because we can end up giving each other work, and that's my goal. Crew members, producers, location scouts, casting, we have to band together here in Alaska and make it work for all of us so that more work comes to us. I don't really believe in competition, although I know it is a fact of life. But I try to share the wealth and in turn have others share the wealth with me. I think it's important for us as a community.
What kind of a future do you see for Alaska filmmaking?
I see a bright future for Alaska filmmaking. I've noticed since the incentive has been instated, more and more jobs are coming here and more of my friends and colleagues are working. So I am very hopeful about the future after the incentive.
So how have you seen the film community develop over the past several years?
Since the incentive has been passed compared to when I arrived in Alaska, it's night and day. I used to go months without working and have to do other things to make a living. And now it seems like I almost go from job to job. And my friends and colleagues in the business are also pretty busy. And I know that has everything to do with the incentive. And not only people that are actually getting the incentive, but that just see Alaska more because other people are shooting it. So yeah, it's made a big, huge, great difference.
Coming from a journalism background, do you find that helps you with productions?
I do think that my journalistic background helps with productions. Most everything that I've worked on in Alaska is documentary or reality. So coming from a background where I have to deal with real people as opposed to actors, I think that it makes a huge difference and helps me just be able to know what questions to ask for interviews. I do a lot of interviewing, and it's crucial. I think my journalistic background is absolutely essential to my success here.
So welcome to the other side of the camera. How does that feel?
I feel very much in the spotlight here, literally. I have to deal with people all the time that aren't used to being interviewed, and I have to have empathy for them, and usually it works out well. But being here myself now, I get a better understanding of how they feel, which is not too great, but I'm enjoying this experience.
Can you extrapolate on some of your experiences working with Alaskan filmmakers?
I love Alaskan filmmakers. I think it's an amazing community of talented people. I think that the community here is on par with the community that I worked with in Los Angeles. I've also worked in London for a year, and I've worked in New York, and these guys here are just as good.
Is there any kind of specific documentary that you'd really like to make?
Yes, I have a list of documentaries that I would like to make. One has been accomplished last year. I always wanted to work on a wildlife type documentary, and I spent a year working on a documentary for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the Tetlin National Wildlife Refuge. That was a big dream of mine. I'd like to do a lot more of that work. I'd like to do a lot more work with National Geographic. I also just have a list of other projects that I want to do. 2 of them are at the top of my list, and then there's ones after that. So, but yes, I have a lot of interest in a lot of different projects, and it's just a matter of getting enough work so that I can afford to do my own projects. And again, with this amazing film community here, I have people that I can count on to shoot for me and edit for me, and I tend to work with these people a lot, and I hope that my own projects will come up within the next year or 2.
For any aspiring documentary filmmakers, are there resources or fundraising resources that you can suggest?
Yes, absolutely. They should join the IDA, which is the International Documentary Association. They put out a newsletter, and they have an online site that has a ton of different grants that are offered for all different kinds of things. And that's a good way, that's a good resource for people that are looking for money. Also, I suggest going into your community where documentary filmmakers are working and working for them for free. Documentary filmmakers don't usually have a lot of money, but it's really important that you don't worry about the money and you just get in there and help out. And those are my 2 best ideas for them. And watch a lot of documentaries and watch a lot of people and just make it part of your life.
Has attending film school benefited you in your real life endeavors?
I went to one of the most prestigious film schools probably in the world, which is NYU Film, and I lasted a semester there. I feel that being out in the field is more important. The classes did teach you technical stuff, how to use different cameras, but I felt like that my peers who were not in the film school were actually doing more interesting projects. But at the film school itself, the films that I was doing were what they told me to do, and mainly narrative things. Whereas I wanted to do more documentary things, but I'm not saying that it wasn't a good experience, and I actually met some great people there that are doing great things now, and NYU is absolutely fantastic school. But for me personally, for what I wanted to do, I needed to just be out in the field doing it and getting a more well-rounded education. So that was for me. I think for someone that's interested in narrative, it might have been a better experience for them.
What advice do you have for future filmmakers?
My advice for future filmmakers is start from the ground up. Take the lowest job you can on a set, even if it's for no pay. Meet people, and you will work. If you have a passion for this industry, you will work, even though it's a small community. It's all about the passion, and I think we have a very passionate community here, and we need more. So come on in, call me. I work with a lot of young people that do not have experience, but they're enthusiastic. And that's really what it's all about, enthusiasm and passion for production in any form.
That's all the time we have for today's episode of Alaska Filmmakers. For more information about Laura and her current projects, please visit our website at alaskafilmmakers.com. We'd like to thank Laura and Alaska Pacific University for all of their hospitality, as well as our sponsors and supporters for making this season of Alaska Filmmakers possible. Join us next week as we sit down with Jonathan Huff, owner and operator of Alaska Universal Productions. And until then, remember, everyone has a story to tell.